All right, if someone would please respond to me in the chat box so I'll know that you are there, I would appreciate it. I want to make sure that you can hear me and that things are going well. Not always had the best experience using Google Hangouts as the webinar platform, so I want to make sure that everybody is able to hear as we get started. All right. Okay. Make sure that everybody is able to hear. All right, it sounds like you should be able to hear me. Make sure that you press the play button, okay? You will have to press the play button. All right. Say something in the chat box so I'll know that you're there. That way I will know that you are hearing what is happening here, okay? That's the only way I have to know. So please give me a response. You may have to press the play button in order to make that work. So let's see, I'm gonna give you a few seconds to come in. All right. I know a couple of you were on earlier, so please give me an indication there so I'll know what's going on. I hate to start my webinars this way, so please help me out if you can. All right. Walt says he's there. Lisa says she's there. Let's see. Tom, are you there? We'll make sure Tom's on. Okay, good. I want to make sure everybody hears. There is a pretty significant delay, so it's hard for me to tell sometimes. There's a delayed response that happens. We'll find the perfect webinar platform sometime, and then what'll happen is somebody will screw it up. So that's okay. We'll do the best we can with what we have. Again, my philosophy has always been sell what you've got. And so this is what we're using tonight, and we'll see if we can make this work. Okay. We want to talk about success principles tonight. Success principles. Let me give you a little bit of background about me for just a moment. I've taught these things for the last 20 years. I traveled the country for almost 18 years teaching in two completely different and unrelated industries. One was insurance, the other was industrial sales. And I taught sales reps, store owners, managers, retail locations, wholesale locations, taught all kinds of people, business owners of every walk of life you can imagine, certain principles about success. And when I did that, they were very appreciative and very successful as a result of that. So I wanted to share those with you in a webinar. Typically, this type of a training takes about 2 days. It's usually delivered in a workshop style. And there's a great deal of homework to be done. There's a great deal of breakout time where you have to focus on your attention on some things. So I'm going to give you the highlights tonight and do my best to help you to understand that there are some things that you can begin to practice immediately that can help you to become more successful as a person, as a business owner, as an individual who's making an impact in your community. So I'm going to give you some success principles. Here's the first thing that I want to share with you is that success always leaves clues. The problem is that we don't talk about the clues. We only talk about the success. We all know what happened with Bill Gates, and we all know what happened with Stephen Jobs, and we all know what's happened with some of the great people that we've looked up to and seen their amazing success. We don't always know what it took to get them there. We don't always know the path that they had to follow in order to get to that place. We don't talk about the clues. We just talk about the successes. We should be teaching in school, from elementary school on up, how people become successful and what they go through and what the struggles that they have and the difficulties that they face and what they do to overcome those struggles and difficulties. And we don't do that. We just hold them up as role models without any clue as to how they got from here to there. And our history is filled with examples of people who have struggled, and I mean that honestly, have struggled to try to get to the point where I mean, you know about Colonel Sanders, and we could go on and on and on and on and on. And look at numerous people who've had major struggles in their life, and yet we see them as successful individuals. We don't talk about the struggles that they had. So the clues along the way are the things that we miss, and those are the things I want to kind of highlight quickly tonight. And the first one, I got 4 principles I'm going to share with you. The first one is the value of struggling, seeking, and surviving. The value of struggling, seeking, and surviving. There's tremendous value in understanding that there is a struggle, there is a seeking, and there's a surviving step in that path that we build in order to get from here to success. So I want to talk about the value of struggling, seeking, and surviving for just a moment. And I'm going to break these down into each of those 3 components. And the first one is the value of struggling. This is a quote from James Allen. I really like this, and I think it will help you as you go. He who would live a life secure and blessed, that's success. A life freed from the miseries and failures to which so many fall victims. The reason why they fall victims is because they fall and they stay down. Must carry the practice of the moral principles into every detail of his life, into every momentary duty and trivial transaction. And here's the point that I'm trying to make here with the value of struggling. We have to learn that lesson. We have to learn it the hard way. When my kids were growing up, I had a really simple rule for them. They were not allowed to do anything stupid, which forced them to evaluate every decision that they made. Is this going to be stupid? Because Dad doesn't have a rule for that. He just has one rule: is don't do anything stupid. And so when they would do something and disaster would come, I would sit them down and I'd say, did you do something stupid? Well, yeah. And so they began to evaluate the things that they looked at in life as, is this a stupid thing to do? Because we got to stub our toe to figure out what those things are. And stupid always looks like a really good idea. It always looks like a really good idea until you figure out what the consequences are going to be. And so there's a value in the struggle. The value in the struggle is if I put a little child on a bicycle and they immediately can ride up and down the street, they don't learn anything about balance. They don't learn anything about steering. They don't learn anything about being able to do this on their own. There's value in the struggle, and that goes all the way through life. There's a tremendous value in struggle. In every little thing, he needs to be thorough and honest and neglecting nothing. And so there's great value in the struggling process that takes place here. The next one is the value of seeking. When I taught school, I would always encourage my students to be seekers and not students. I'd always tell those people who were in my class, I want you to be a seeker, not a student. Because a seeker follows the truth wherever it leads. A student's just looking to know just enough to get by. They want to, is this going to be on the test? The people whose favorite question is this going to be on the test, were missing the point of my class completely. They were missing the lessons of life completely. And they were really missing out because they were not seekers. They were just students. A seeker looks for solutions. And a solution becomes a universal thing. An answer is just enough to get me by. And a seeker looks for solutions, but a student looks for answers. And struggling turns you into a seeker. Struggling is what it takes to turn you into a seeker. So there's a value in struggling. There's a value in seeking. Let's take a look at the third one. There's also a value in surviving. Highly successful people have learned how to survive failure. I'll flip this around. It's not on this list, but I'll flip this around. They've also learned how to survive success. Because there is value in learning how to survive success. It's not always easy to survive success. And many very successful people have reached a level of success only to crash completely and end up losing everything in order for them to become permanently prosperous. So highly successful people have learned how to survive failure. They've also learned how to survive success. Highly successful people have also survived loss. It may be a loss of business. It might be a loss of money. It might be a loss of relationship. They have learned how to survive loss. the loss didn't take them off the track to success. So there's a tremendous value in surviving. Highly successful people have survived bankruptcy. Most highly successful people have been bankrupt at some point in their life. Whether they filed an official bankruptcy or not doesn't really matter. What really matters is they've learned how to survive not having anything and having everything that they had taken away from them. They've learned how to survive bankruptcy. There's a value in surviving. And finally, highly successful people have learned how to survive attacks from other people. Almost everybody I know that's struggled in any way has had naysayers. They've had people who've had something awful to say about them. They've had people who've had something ugly to say about them. And they have learned how to survive that. They don't cry about it. They don't moan about it. They don't go on Facebook and trash people because of it. They simply learn how to survive the attacks from other people. And so that's the first principle. The second one, we're going to dig a little deeper now. The second thing that I want you to see tonight is the invincible power of thought. Love, this is the tail end of a very long poem, but the tail end goes like this. Life's battles don't go away. Don't always go to the stronger or faster man. But soon or late, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. It's a great poem. It's 100 years old, but it makes a lot of sense. That power of thought is incredibly important. Said another way from Charles Haanel in his book, The Master Key to Success, says, there are no limitations to the mind except those weak knowledge. Both poverty and riches are the offspring of our thoughts. Wow. If poverty is the offspring of my thoughts, then I can turn that around and riches can become the offspring of my thoughts. So we're going to talk about the invincible power of thought for a little bit tonight. And we're going to dig a little deeper on this one because this is where I really kind of want to park my attention here. Let me check to see if we've got any questions as we go. Doesn't look like we've had anybody ask a question since we all jumped in here. So let's take a look at the next thing. The invincible power of thought. I'm going to break thought down for you because the most important thing that you can do, poverty and riches are the offspring of thought. So we're going to focus our attention on thinking in a systematic way tonight. There are two arenas of thought. Two. The first one is conscious. The other one is subconscious. Some people, and I'm one of them, prefers to call it superconscious because the conscious mind, well, let's take a look at the elements of the conscious mind here, okay? We're very aware of our conscious mind. We know what we see, hear, smell, think, or see, hear, smell, touch, and taste. We are very conscious of our conscious world. We know what the inputs are. We know where they come from. We know that they're there. But our conscious mind is also very linear, and it's singularly focused, and it's very limited. So our conscious mind, which we're very aware of, it's the thing that we function in most of our time. But it's also linear, it's singularly focused, and it's limited. And the reason is because it is linear, singularly focused. That's what makes it limited. But we do most of our thinking with our conscious mind. Most of the time, we're thinking at the conscious level, not at the subconscious. And so what happens is that we start looking for solutions from our conscious mind. We get an input, something bad happens, something negative that happens. We get if we're in a sales situation, somebody tells us no. We have an amazing proposal and we put it out and the person says, no way, no how, we're not ever going to do that. Or whatever it is, we have a business and we make a bid on a location and we're going to move into this location and all of a sudden, the zoning ordinances won't allow you to go there or something. And so then we immediately apply our conscious mind to the problem. And we don't see the bigger picture. We function at that conscious level all of the time. Let's take a look at the subconscious, this super conscious mind. We're frequently unaware of our subconscious mind. We're frequently very unaware of the fact that we have a subconscious mind and that it exists for our benefit. because we're so used to thinking in a linear fashion. We're taught to think in a linear fashion. Our school systems, our educational systems are all very linear. And you learn English in the English class, you learn mathematics in the mathematics class, and you learn history in a history class, and you never connect those dots. And because we do that, we've learned to function very successfully in our conscious world without understanding the value and the power of the subconscious world. So we become unaware of the power of our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind is multifaceted. It sees connections, it sees patterns, it sees causal relationships, it sees things that are jointed together. It's hypersensitive to those kinds of things. Most of our great problem solving is done with our subconscious mind. And that subconscious mind is highly sensitive to influences. It's one of the reasons why we're told in the Bible that we're supposed to guard our heart, because out of it flows the issues of life. It's warning us to be careful what we put in, because if we're listening to negative stuff, then our subconscious mind becomes highly negative. If we're listening to those things that lead to poverty, then poverty becomes the result of our thoughts. Our subconscious mind is incredibly powerful. It's hypersensitive, and we need to pay very careful attention to what we feed it. So that's the two arenas of thought. Let's see what we're going to do with them. The first one is I like to function in this thing that I call the deep thought process. Some people call it image streaming. There's all kinds of names for it. I just simply call it the deep thought process. And the deep thought process is what allows me to be able to tap into the power of that subconscious mind, where I'm able to look for patterns, where I'm able to look for connections, where I'm able to look for causal relationships, where I'm able to see how those things are related in such a way that it makes it possible for me to find solutions that nobody else has thought about. And when something gets triggered in our conscious world, we need an opportunity to be able to deal with it in our subconscious world. And here's a quote from Charles Haanel, which I think will help explain that. Those people who have learned to do this deep thought process, those people who have learned to use their subconscious mind, find that when some difficult business problem presents itself, they can afford to make a delay. Rather than jumping and immediately thrusting on that, a solution coming from your conscious world, they take their time and they make delay and something. I love the way he says this, because the something is that subconscious mind begins to take over. And the subconscious mind suggests the proper solution. Everything is properly arranged. It takes all of the pieces, shows how they're connected, and puts them in the proper order that they belong. In fact, those who've learned to trust their subconscious mind, excuse me, I have a sneeze trying to come on. Those who've learned to trust the subconscious mind find that they have infinite resources at their command. And I'm going to give you a personal illustration here, okay? Yesterday. And one of the reasons why I've always got personal illustrations for something like this is because, and I trust this, I trust my subconscious mind to deliver to me the things that I need. I was thinking through this webinar yesterday. I was thinking about the resources that I'm going to give you when the webinar is over. And if you'll take a careful look down at the bottom there, you'll see under where it says shared URL, there's the resources. And I'll explain those in detail in just a little bit. But I was editing those resources, getting them ready for this webinar. And I get a phone call. Phone calls about a business partnership that I'm involved in. And we thought we had really, really bad news that happened. And I get this truckload of stuff dumped on me. And I took a deep breath. And it took a moment. I said, I'm just going to have just a minute to process this. And I went from feeling like I had been punched in the gut and all the life sucked completely out of me because we'd put a lot of time and effort and energy into this thing, and whoop, it was gone. And then I began to see the pieces. Well, wait a minute. There's a reason for this. There's something over here. There's a way we can do this. There's something that can happen over here. And all of a sudden, I went from feeling like the life had been sucked out of me to feeling incredibly energized. In a conversation that took about 15 minutes, I couldn't believe how I went from being just completely deflated to completely exhilarated. And that was a direct result of my subconscious mind beginning to take over and give me the details. So when I finished, I wrote this note to my partner who had called me earlier. I was editing my notes for the webinar on system, and I'll give you that to you in just a little bit. This you're going to get pillar number 4, which is system, from the 8 pillars of prosperity. And I was editing the notes for my webinar on system when you called. I stopped and took the call. I returned to my laptop, and the next sentence said, "So must the man of thought be able to deal with the details of any new problem which may arise." And I went, there it is. There it is. Not only is that a great illustration for tonight's webinar, but it is a great reminder of the very thing that took place. Instead of being the man who was defeated, I became the man who fought. And that subconscious mind took over. And so now I have a great illustration about how that worked. I sent that to the 2 people who were involved. They were like, oh, that's what we were looking for. Yeah, see, we couldn't see that. And we have to be able to see that. Part of this, remember the first 3 things? There's value in struggling, seeking, and surviving. And that's a pretty good place to be. All right, let me see if there's any questions so far about what we're talking about. Doesn't look like anybody's made a question, so we'll go on. Feel free to drop your questions in there. I will come back and forth to the questions as we go through the webinar, but I don't want you to miss out on that, okay? So let's go back to, that was my personal illustration. Now let's take a look at the next thing. Because the next thing is the subconscious mind is sensitive, and sometimes it's hypersensitive. Talked about that's why you have to guard your heart. It's protected by our conscious mind. We have to be careful what we feed our consciousness because it's feeding our subconsciousness. Okay? It's the reason why I stopped watching the news years ago. I just completely stopped watching the news. It doesn't make any difference to me anymore. You think I don't care about things in my world? I do. I care very much about the things in my world. But I'm going to be very careful to limit the things that I put in. I have to use my conscious mind to guard my subconscious mind. And I've got to be very careful about that because that's the thing that makes power thinking take place. So it's sensitive, sometimes hypersensitive. It's protected by our conscious mind. It creates relationships and sees patterns. And I was amazed as I stepped back and I thought about this, that, hey, I'm seeing things here that I would have never seen any other way. I'm seeing opportunity I would have never seen any other way. And then number 4, it takes interest into account. This is really important. Let's talk about interest for just a little bit, okay? This is what I mean when I say it takes interest into account. I'm going to park here for a little bit. I'd partnered with a man several months ago, probably 10 months ago, maybe 12 months ago now, who repeatedly used a phrase every time the 2 of us were talking on the phone or on Skype. He repeatedly used this phrase. This is like stealing candy from a baby. And I didn't realize the first time I heard him say that, what that did to me. I didn't realize the 10th or 15th time I heard him say it, what it did to me. But I knew that something was happening. And I would get up from my desk and I would walk around and go, why can't you think clearly? This is right up your alley. This is the very thing that you are made to do. You feel like your entire thought processes have been shut down. And part of that is because I've learned to operate in that subconscious space so well that I'm very sensitive to these things. But my ability to think when he would say that just got shut down. And I would look at the notes, and I was taking we were crafting notes for a program, and you could see a difference in the things that I would write when we were taking the notes after that statement was made. And I realized that what that is it's a violation of interest. That your subconscious mind operates at an interest level. I'm going to give you two things that are reflected in that interest level. And they're going to fall under this category of alignment, congruence, and agreement. But don't forget that story, like taking candy from a baby, because that did something to me. That took me out of alignment, took me out of congruence, and I could no longer pursue that partnership because I was not in agreement with that. So most of life is a positive sum game. It is possible for both sides to win. In this everybody gets a trophy kind of world that we live in, the truth is that there is some value in that. There is some benefit in recognizing that we live in a world that is a positive sum game, that there doesn't have to be a winner and a loser in everything. Sometimes there can be, and oftentimes there's a win-win. If you have something if there's something that you need and I have it, and we have a value exchange that takes place, I benefit because you've paid me for the thing that you needed. You benefit because you got the thing that you needed. And so that's a positive sum game. It's a win-win. Nobody lost in that situation. People won. Now, unfortunately, our world has become rather corrupt, and it doesn't always look like a win-win. Sometimes it looks like a win-loss. But our subconscious mind operates in that positive sum game world. So we have to start to think win-win. And this whole matter of alignment, congruence, and agreement comes from a win-win mentality. And it's so important that we get our head wrapped around the value of that win-win. Okay? Are y'all with me? Tell me something good in the chat box so I'll know that you're still paying attention, you're still there. William says, I haven't turned the TV on in more than 3 years. Good for you. Good for you. I find that positive people who are winners, people who are successful, tend to be really careful about the junk that goes in. And congratulations on that. I appreciate that. I think that's a valuable piece of information. So thank you for reminding us of that tonight. Let's take a look at the next thing here. As we think win-win, and we recognize that most of life is a positive sum game. There doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. When a sale takes place, there doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. There should be two winners. And when we start to think that way, life changes for us, and our subconscious mind is free to work. So there's two important interests that must be in complete alignment. The first one is, this is when that subconscious mind plays with two interests. The first one is your long-term interest. That I like to refer to that as permanent prosperity. Your long-term interest. What's this going to do for you in the long term? So if I win this account, am I going to be a blessing to them and they're going to be a blessing to me? Or we're going to be a win-win? Or is this going to be something I'm going to regret for the rest of my life? And see, if it's something that whether I'm aware of or not, that I'm going to regret for the rest of my life, I have to trust my subconscious mind to give me a yes or a no, a go or a no-go. And sometimes that's with partnerships, and I've because I get involved in a lot of those things, and sometimes I can't do that. You know, sometimes I'll hear it out. I'll go a long ways down the road, and there'll be something that will trigger that, and it always comes from my subconscious mind. Always. And I'm alerted to the fact that something went wrong. And so that long-term interest, my subconscious mind is looking out for my long-term interest, wants me to be permanently prosperous, not, pardon this expression, but this came from when I was raising cattle as a kid, not a quick lick. The mother cow would give the calf they would lick the cow after it was born, and the cow who didn't give a rip about the calf would give it what we called a quick lick, and then the calf oftentimes died as a result of that. So my subconscious mind has my long-term interest, my best long-term interest in hand. And number two, the interest of other people who would be affected by the outcome. My subconscious mind is concerned about other people. That's the reason why that statement, like stealing candy from a baby, that just, it was burning a hole in my soul, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. But it was coming from the fact that that's a clear indication that the interest of other people were going to be affected by that. That I was that somehow there was a violation that was going on here, and the foundation had a violation in it, and we couldn't go any further. I saw that as being wrong. So your deep thought is linked to your best long-term interest, and it's also linked to the best interest of all those people who are involved. I have to make sure that all those people who are involved are benefiting as well. That's a win-win situation. If I'm in a win-win situation, puts me at a huge advantage. And so when I'm going to crush the competition, that mentality limits how deeply I can think about it. It steals from me the understanding of abundance, and keeps me from understanding that, hey, there's plenty for everybody. Yes, you might have 80% of the market share, and I might have 20% of the market share, but I promise you that if you got 70% and I got 30%, that 10% would be beneficial for you to lose and 10% for me to be beneficial to gain. And we start thinking about it, and then pretty soon what you recognize is that your 100% of the market share grows to 110%, because everybody's doing what's best for them. I've never wanted to crush my competition. I want to elevate them. They're valuable to me. They mean something to me. When I'm talking to somebody about a business proposal, and the first thing that they say is, oh, that will just destroy so-and-so, then I'm going to have a hard time dealing with that. I really am, because it limits my creativity. It limits my capability of being able to function in that environment, because my deep thought is deeply linked to the best interest of all those that are involved. So I've been rattling about that for a while. Do you all understand what I'm talking about here? Good, good, good. Looks like you all are affirming the facts that I'm saying here um, about limiting the input that you have. So let's focus our attention now on this best interest thing. Okay, the interest, the alignment of the interest is extremely important. It's extremely important for us to be able to understand the value that our deep thought process can bring to us. So our deep thoughts are blocked by a win for you that results in a loss for somebody else. I can't even tell you how this works, but if somebody else is going to lose, then I'm limited on how creatively I'll think. I'm limited on how much effort and attention that my subconscious mind is going to be able to give it. Do you understand that? Tell me if you understand what I'm talking about when I say that my ability to think deeply about this will be severely limited or blocked if a win for me results in a loss for somebody else. Do you understand what I'm saying when I say that? Because this is the key. Good. Good. I really want you to get that because I think that's the key. The reason why some people function really well at finding incredible solutions that come from their subconscious mind. The reason why they find those is because they are playing in a space, they're operating in a place where not that they're out to destroy anybody else, they're out to elevate everybody in the process. And when you do that, it opens up a whole world to you. These are principles of success, but this success is limited by what you think. And sometimes your thought processes are limited because your intention is wrong. Your interest is wrong. Your desire and your devotion and your dedication is wrong. I was talking to a person one time not long ago about who else was in a particular space. Oh, we're going to destroy them. Oh, we're just going to crush those guys. And that went absolutely nowhere because you can't think in a creative fashion if you're going to steal from somebody else to make you better. And your deep thought processes are limited and they're blocked when that happens. The second thing that blocks that is when a win results in a long-term loss for you. I've never played the lottery. I don't gamble. I have no interest in that whatsoever, but I've studied it carefully. And I've studied it carefully because I was in Kansas City, Missouri, when Kansas City, Missouri decided to use the lottery to get their bankrupt school out of financial trouble. And so I followed that for years, and I followed it very carefully to see what happened. The fact is that and I wrote detailed study of this about 3 years ago. No, it's been about 6 years ago now, on the 20th anniversary of the lottery in Kansas City, Missouri. The school district is still bankrupt. The graduation rate is as low as it's ever been in the history of the Kansas City, Missouri school district. No vendor will extend credit to them. The poverty problem is just as great as it's ever been. And the people who have been the lottery winners have been the long-term losers. So your deep thought process, here's my thought, okay? I'm such a believer that your subconscious mind will give you the things that you need, that I believe that if it was a win for everybody, your subconscious mind would deliver to you the numbers to play the lottery. But I've never seen that happen. And I believe the reason why I've never seen it happen is because the ultimate end game of that is it becomes a loss for somebody else. It becomes a loss for some people who played and lost. It becomes a loss for the people who win, because study the lives of people who won the lottery. In the long term, they've all been worse off than they were before. You look at the professional athletes. I have a good friend who's won in Birmingham, who was completely bankrupt. One of the highest paid players at one time, completely bankrupt, because the long term turned out to be worse than what they got in the short term. So your deep thinking gets blocked by those factors. Just understand that. Let me check the questions here. William, you've completely identified it. If you help enough people, there's some magic in that. We're going to talk about that in the personality, the magnetic personality, which is principle number 4, and we're going to get to that one in just a minute. But if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want, because then it becomes a win-win. And win-win opens up all kinds of opportunities to you. It opens up your ability to think. I'm really afraid that we have limited our world so severely because we have failed to recognize that there's some things that keep us from being able to think. And if I have to win, if in order for me to win, you have to lose, I'm not going to be able to think very clearly. And that's the reason why it's short-term gains and long-term losses. Short-term gains and long-term losses. Yeah, I mean, history is replete with those guys, William. They're everywhere who a short-term gain became a long-term loss. And I am convinced that that blocks our subconscious mind from being able to give us clarity. And that being blocked from being able to get clarity severely limits our abilities. Okay, and that's the reason why. And I thank you for mentioning that quote. And that quote's from Zig Ziglar, who said, "If you help enough people get what they want, you will get what you want." And he was so right about that. And sometimes one day I drove over to Yazoo City, Mississippi, so that I could be in the same town where Zig Ziglar grew up. And the drive over there was a fascinating drive. The drive through the city was a fascinating drive. But I realized that this guy had to learn that right here on the street, Yazoo City, Mississippi. And so it was a pretty interesting journey down memory lane anytime I see a quote from him. So thank you for that. All right. Two things that block our deep thinking. One is when a win for you results in a loss for somebody else. And the second one is when the win results in a long-term loss for you. So let's see what we do here. I'm going to take this alignment, agreement, and congruence, and I'll break it down into three phases. Alignment is a definiteness of interest. Make sure that whatever it is that you're working on does not result in a loss for somebody else if you win, because you're limiting your capability of thinking with your subconscious mind about it. So that definiteness of interest. Is it going to be in your long-term best interest? Because see, and I was talking with somebody the other day who thought that they had this business idea that was going to result in them making millions of dollars and not having to do anything but just give somebody an idea. Well, there is a fundamental law of the universe that says that's the result of hard work. That kind of money is the result of hard work. Having an idea isn't hard work. Knowing how to execute on that idea and then executing on the idea and building a customer base and creating a market for that and having sales in it, that's hard work. And that hard work will pay off. And so there's a definiteness of interest that has to take place in order for you to have alignment. If you don't have alignment, you're going to struggle. And you're going to say you can't be successful if you don't have alignment. The interesting thing is the people who've been incredibly successful have not been people who set out to make millions of dollars. They set out to make a difference. A situation where everybody rose to the occasion, all that the tide lifted all the ships in the harbor, not just one. And so that alignment must take place. The second one is agreement. There's no more powerful force in the universe than agreement. There's an interesting, very negative statement made in the Bible at the Tower of Babel. It said that if we allow them to, God said, if we allow them to continue, because they are all one, they're in agreement about their principle, even though their intention was wrong, there's nothing they won't be able to do. Because agreement is incredibly powerful. When you agree, when your partner's in agreement, when your spouse is in agreement, when your kids are in agreement, when your marketplace is in agreement, there's nothing you can't do. And you have to have agreement in order to be successful in the world in which we live. And the third one is congruence. And that opens up the channels to allow you to have deep thought. This congruence of interest is what I just took you through when we talked about the two things that either open up the channel or block it. And so that's really, really important. Okay. All right, I'm looking here. Let's see. Is there anything else that we have comments? It looks like Walter was talking about something being powerful here. And yes, William, I do appreciate that. I love to do live webinars because I like the live input. I think live input is valuable. You will never see me do a video, a pre-taped webinar. I don't think that that's the right way to do this. I think that there's an energy that I get from you and that you get from me that we can't do on a video. And so while I'll make the replay available to those people who ask for it, I think the real magic happens when it's on a live webinar. And that's the reason why I do them frequently like this. Okay. I do believe, William, this is the first webinar that you've attended, and thank you for coming. So I've enjoyed having you on today. So number four is the power of a magnetic personality. Now, Napoleon Hill called it a pleasing personality. But I want to call it a magnetic personality because it kind of blends in that law of attraction. And this is a comment taken directly from Napoleon Hill's Laws of Success, 1175 page book that I try to read about 2 or 3 times a year. Used to read it more frequently than that, but there's some value in this. The importance of a pleasing personality has been stressed, and he's talking about it's been stressed throughout his book, because it's a factor which enables one to render service in the proper spirit. A pleasing personality is somebody who doesn't think win-lose. He doesn't think lose-lose. He thinks win-win. And that attracts. Who's going to be attracted? That's why I like the word of magnetic. Who's going to be attracted to a personality? Who's going to be attracted to a personality that thinks win-win? Answer that if you can for me. Who's going to be attracted to a personality that thinks win-win? There's only one kind of personality that's going to be attracted to people who think win-win, and that's people who want to win. And that's who I want to attract to me. People who want to win, that's who I want to be around. I want to be attracted to people. I don't want to be attractive to people who want to win. A little personal story about that. I got a phone call from the legal department for an insurance company that I represented. Actually, I had been their senior sales trainer, and then I went and took over a district to try to resurrect it. And I did. We were able to resurrect that district. But I got a phone call saying that I wasn't getting along with my regional manager. And so I'm talking to the legal department, who I knew the guy really well. I won't tell you his name, but I knew him really well. And we'd had numerous conversations, never had one where I had an issue. And he called me, he says, Eric, I don't know how to tell you this, but we've got a little issue. Your manager has complained about you. And he said, do you have any idea what's going on? I said, yeah, I do. I know exactly what's happening. I said, I can tell you this. The world falls into 2 very specific categories where I'm concerned. Yeah, those people who think that there is no system, there's no order, that everything operates by accident. And then you have those who think that everything operates by order, and that there are certain principles that you cannot violate and be successful. And the people who think that way think I'm a hero. The people who think that everything happens by accident think I'm an ass. And he thinks that everything happens by accident. And so we don't see eye to eye. And I discovered that there was something deeper than that. We were at the same place at a dinner, and he couldn't take his eyes off of the waitresses in the building. And I went, there's something else going on with this guy. And there's a personality issue there that I find objectionable. A pleasing personality, a magnetic personality, somebody that you want to be around, somebody that you attract the right people to them or to you. And that's this magnetic personality. So important here is that we have this pleasing magnetic personality. Um, if one has a personality which pleases and renders service in a spirit of harmony, love that word harmony. I do a webinar for a company that their CEO calls himself the chief harmonizer. I love that. To bring harmony that renders service in a spirit of harmony, then these assets make up for deficiencies in both the quality and the quantity of service that one renders. Nothing, however, can be successfully substituted for pleasing conduct. And one of the most important principles on the path to success is to have a pleasing personality, that magnetic personality that attracts the people who want to do business with you, the people who want to be around you, the people who want to, how do I want to say this? Who want to love on you? That's something we say in the South. People just want to love on you. And that's the people that we want to attract. That's the business that we want to attract. That's the relationships that we want to attract. People who want what we have. And it comes because we have rendered service in the proper spirit. We have a personality that's pleasing. We operate in a spirit of harmony, and that can make up for some other shortcomings. But it's that pleasing personality and conduct. I'm going to close with this. I've got something that I'm going to give to you. This is there's in the link that I put in the shared URL. There's 3 things in that link. I'm going to put this in a mind map, and I'll put that up there later when I put the replay up, and I'll make sure that y'all get the replay as well. But there's there's 3 resources there. One are the notes for this webinar. One is, and I think you'll like this. There's a book written by James Allen called the Eight Pillars of Prosperity. I love that book. It is an amazing book. But pillar number 4 is the pillar of system. And what we're talking about here is the value of system as a principle for success. And I've given you things that are a system. Last week I talked about the problem-solving process as being a system of thinking, and this is a system for looking at my world. This is a system for building that path to success that I can function on, that I can operate on. This is a system for thinking about making sure using tools to determine, is this a win-win? Is this going to be in the best interest of me in the long term? Is this going to be something that's going to be a win for everybody that's involved? Is this something that's not going to that may be a short-term benefit but a long-term destruction? Those are things that I use to evaluate things by. And when I do that, it makes all the difference in the world. And so I've given you the 4th pillar, the chapter on system from the book, The 8 Pillars of Prosperity. And that's available in the resources. And so there'll be the download of pillar 4. So you'll have that. You have the notes that we've just gone through. You'll have those notes. And then the 3rd thing that you'll have is you'll have this, and I'm going to open this up so you can see this. And this, I call this my congruence affirmation. I love this. It reads like this: I believe in myself. I believe in those who work with me. I believe in my employer. I believe in my friends. I believe in my family. I believe that God will lend me everything I need with which to succeed if I do my best to earn it through faithful and honest service. I believe in prayer, and I will never close my eyes and sleep without praying for divine guidance to the end that I may be patient with other people and tolerant with those who do not believe as I do. I believe that success is the result of intelligent effort and does not depend upon luck or sharp practices or double-crossing friends or fellow man or my employer. I believe I will get out of life exactly what I put into it. Therefore, I will be careful to conduct myself toward others as I would want them to act toward me. I will not slander those who I do not like. I will not slight my work, no matter what I may see others doing. I will render the best service of which I am capable, because I have pledged myself to succeed in life, and I know that success is always the result of conscientious and efficient effort. Finally, I will forgive those who offend me, because I realize that I shall sometimes offend others, and I will need their forgiveness. I love that. That helps you to. Every time I read that, and I read it frequently, should probably make it a practice to read it every day, but I read it frequently, reminds me of congruence. And I make sure that the things that I do in my life, I can say with all honesty. I could substitute here instead of employer, because I don't have an employer, but I could substitute in there my partners. I believe in my partners. And this helps me to achieve that congruence. And so that's available for you as well in the notes that I have given to you at that link. Okay, so with that, we're at 55 minutes. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or something that you would like to say before we close? I don't want to close without a question answered. So if anybody should have a question, I'll be glad to answer that. And no, I don't have anything to sell you. That's not my intention. My intention was to give you some things that might be beneficial to you. I want this to be a win-win. Doesn't mean I won't have things to sell at some point in time, but that's okay. I've been paid well for this, so I want to share it. Any comments? I try to take the delay into consideration here before I assume. I'm not sure how to answer that question, Walt. No, this is what I did for 18 years, and it's been burning a hole in me to just share it with people. So decided I would include this in my webinar schedule. Several of you on tonight are new, and I appreciate that. Always do. Many of you have come back. Walter always comes. Lisa's always there. And so I appreciate you being in my webinars. I have another webinar planned for Saturday, and the webinar on Saturday will be what I call the Change Your World webinar. And in that case, I cover 9 things that can be done in your local community that if we do those, and to the degree that we do those, we will change the world. Okay? I'm always excited about that webinar. That's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing that, and I'm looking forward to sharing that one on Saturday. So it will be on Saturday at 10 o'clock. And I have another webinar tomorrow, which I do for Uzine. So with that, folks, I think I will bring this webinar to a close. Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you for your kind attention tonight. And don't hesitate to jump out there on that link that I gave you and pick up the resources that are available for you. I will put the replay. I always edit the replay and make sure that I've taken out all of the stuff that doesn't belong in there, like can anybody hear me? So I always eliminate those, and then make that webinar available as a replay for those who would like to hear it again. Okay, thank you for your attention tonight. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for sharing your evening with me, and hopefully the things that we've talked about tonight will be helpful to you as you go down the road. Thank you again. I look forward to talking to those of you who will be with me on Saturday.